Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of Fernie City Council held at 6:31 p.m. on June 25th, 2024. Kisuk Yukit, we acknowledge the city of Fernie is located within Kukanamakas, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleat. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. The Kanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleat and are members of the Tanaha-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. So I'll call the meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted by in-person and electronic means in accordance with Council Procedure Bylaw number 2446. I will ask for a mover and a seconder for approval of the agenda and any late items with the following staff recommendation: that the agenda be amended to remove item 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, and the agenda be adopted as amended. And so I'll ask for a mover and a seconder first, and then I'll ask for an explanation. Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. And Mr. Bronowski.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our newly appointed corporate officer noted a number of issues from version control and redlining of the bylaws that need to be addressed. Rather than adopting and then working through the bylaw amendment process, it makes a lot more sense process-wise for us to rescind, amend, and then move forward with readings again in the near future. So we would ask that these be removed. We'll complete some fixes of those version control issues and then bring it back to council corrected.
Thank you, Mr. Bronowski. Any questions from council? All those in favor of adopting the agenda as amended? That is unanimous. Thank you. And for those watching at home, Councillor McIsaac is not here. Councillor Ramadas is here, but he's having a computer camera issue. So you will hear from him later in the meeting. Item 4.1, the minutes of the regular meeting held June 11th, 2024, and the following recommendation: that the minutes of the June 11th, 2024 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I have a mover? Councillor Audia Kelly, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit. And a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And I will look to the gallery. Does anyone wish to speak? Indicating not. And Ms. Rhodes, is anyone online indicated? Thank you. That brings us to item 10.1. The adoption of the subdivision and development servicing bylaw number 2514/2024. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the following staff recommendation: that subdivision and development servicing bylaw number 2514/2024 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Moves us on to item 11.1, our 2023 Statement of Financial Information, a report from our Director of Finance, Mr. Burdett.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Good evening, Council. No slideshow. This is part of our annual reporting requirements to the province. The Statement of Financial Information has 5 items, one of which is the audited financial statements, which Council has already previously approved, and then 4 schedules: statement of severance paid, schedule of any indemnity agreements, of which there are none, statement of our payments to suppliers, and our schedule of remuneration and expenses for council and staff who earn more than $75,000 a year. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burdett. Any questions for Mr. Burdett? Seeing none. I'm sorry, Ms. Daniel, I'm going to ask you to read the recommendations. These ones are a bit wordier.
That the 2023 Statement of Financial Information be approved for filing with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and that the Mayor and Director of Finance be authorized to execute all documents related to the 2023 Statement of Financial Information report.
Mover? Councillor Audie Kelly, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
This moves us right along to item 11.2, the 2023 Annual Municipal Report and Annual General Meeting to receive submissions and questions from the public, beginning with a report from our Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Barnowski.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll present very briefly on the annual report and make a note of thanks to our Corporate Administration Services Department and our Communications Department, our manager, who have put in a ton of work on the report and the material before you today. This is our 2023 annual municipal report, so it's dated until the end of last year. It reports on services and accomplishments from the past year, and it also includes audited financial statements. Note that the focus is on the adopted values, strategies, and objectives from the past year, and so is not focused on council's strategic plan until we get to the end, where we do have a focus, as does every annual report, on what we're doing in our current year, now 2024, and future years. So that's a shift to council's strategic plan. This annual report provides a snapshot of city services, an overview of services and accomplishments by department. And again, it's generally structured around our strategic organizational objectives as adopted in the asset management policy. That policy now, with council having a strategic plan, will need to be updated to reference that new guiding document, as will the annual report moving forward. I'm particularly proud of the accomplishments over the past year. The most noteworthy that I'd like to highlight is the completion of the Annex Park family of projects. The flood protection there, along with a phenomenal active transportation spine, and what I call parklets, but what is the active play station, the amphitheater, and the pavilion, where last year Shad saved the Wapiti Music Fest. Those are phenomenal community assets, and that as an active transportation spine connecting the Visitor Information Center all the way out to Mount Fernie Park Road is a great accomplishment to celebrate from the past year. Flood protection in terms of Mount View Phase 1, as well as significant public engagement and a return to in-person engagement with 4 in-person events, 7 online consultations, a big citizen satisfaction survey at the end of the year, and of course, council's inaugural town hall. We have a number, of grants that we're happy to have secured over the last year. There are many. A few that I'd like to celebrate and recognize would be the support from the Columbia Basin Trust, Tech and Western Financial Communities Foundation for the skate park covered area in particular, the Ministry of Education and Childcare for significant funding towards our childcare and affordable housing project, the Columbia Basin Trust for what was a really innovative after-school program that our Parks, Facilities and Recreation Department launched last year to provide no-cost after-school programming for kids in Fernie, and the Community Energy Preparedness Fund for nearly $2 million for Phase 2 of the Mount View Dike. There are more grants noted in the annual report, along with a lot of other information. And so with that, I will say thank you and conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Barnowski. Any questions for Mr. Barnowski or comments on the annual report from council? Councilor Nixon?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say it just gets better and better every year that I've been in this chair. Not thanks to me, it's thanks to the staff. It's an amazing amount of work, and I hope the public reads this and sees it and comments. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nixon. Any other comments? Councilor Hamilton.
Thank you. One quick question about the annual report. Part of the online engagement was asking for feedback through Let's Talk, and I'm just curious when we would expect that report to be presented to council.
I believe Ms. Daniel summarized and distributed feedback internally today. I haven't had a chance to complete my review of it, so I would ask our corporate officer if she had a plan to bring it forward, or if that is shared directly with council as a briefing note.
It was prepared in a document for sharing tonight. I would be happy to do so if you would like me to. Just one moment.
And sorry, Ms. Daniel, do you do that now or do you wait until we open the public portion of the meeting?
It would be the mayor's discretion. There's no specific place it would need to sit.
Okay, I think we'll wait for that and then Councillor Ramirez?
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to comment on the public engagement and all the open house sessions and various interactions we've had with citizens. So really kudos to you for your leadership to have brought this. That's been a tremendous change in the way the municipality is working. And I don't know how many times I've heard this from citizens in the last couple of months. I know there are always contentious issues where people disagree on few things, but still even the naysayers are coming around and saying the work that yourself and the staff have done on this has been excellent. So just wanted to comment on that.
Oh, very much appreciate that feedback, Councillor Ramirez. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I will ask for a mover and a seconder that council approve the 2023 annual municipal report. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any further discussion? All in favor? And with that, I'm now open the floor to public submissions related to the report or really anything that the city does at this juncture. For comments, questions, anything of that nature from either the floor or online. And I'll give a Erin that's kindly shaking her head, and anyone online indicating Ms. Rhodes. Seeing none, I'll turn to Ms. Daniel and we'll read the submissions we received.
Absolutely. So we received 3 submissions through our Let's Talk email inbox, and I will just break them up into the 3 different submissions. So from one citizen, they made a comment that we could perhaps do a shorter format of the annual report in the future. They noted their desire for keeping our green spaces, and while they appreciated our bylaw officers out in the community, they'd like to see more enforcement for biking and skateboarding, and they all have a desire for more community engagement and opportunities in the future. Our second submission also seconded a desire for further community engagement and provided some feedback for their belief of the designs from last year's sidewalk program, as well as sharing some concerns on conditions of roads throughout the city of Fernie. And lastly, somebody, sorry, I'm just gonna move that so I can move that so I can read it. They noted their belief that the city of Fernie is very progressive in the type of housing that we are allowing, but would like to see further incentives to have more housing density throughout the community. They would like to see an ease in parking restrictions in order to help with this housing density, and perhaps offer the city to offer incentives for businesses to build bike racks to encourage more active transportation. They spoke to perhaps us looking at different requirements for obtaining business licenses to streamline the process. And they would like to see some easing in our zoning rules for where businesses are allowed to operate. And that is all. Those were the 3 submissions we received.
Well, very thoughtful, every one of them. I've often thought about, and this will certainly champion this at our OCP update. We need more corner stores in this town throughout the different neighborhoods. Just a throwback to my youth. Any other comments? Looking around, seeing none. We will move on. Thank you for that, Ms. Daniel. Item 11.3, the City of Fernie Investment Policy, a report from our Director of Finance, Mr. Burditt. Welcome back.
Thank you again, Mayor Milligan, and Council. Just a couple of short slides on the investment policy before you tonight. Some background, the policy itself is quite high level and basic. Quite honestly, the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officer Association of BC, their website has a kind of a best practice investment policy for municipalities, which I just grabbed and used as a starting point for ours. There's two main reasons I'm bringing this forward tonight. Number one is that we don't have an investment policy, and we really should have one. The community charter itself does lay out how we can invest and what types of products we can invest in, but it still is considered best practice to have our own investment policy. And then the second reason is to formalize a kind of an annual review period for council, which will include a review of the policy itself and also a more comprehensive view of how our investment's done. I do during budget process talk about how much investment revenue we're budgeting for, and then also how much we actually received. But I think it would be nice to review each product that we have and see how they've performed against one another. In terms of how this policy will change our current practice, there really is no change apart from how staff potentially will shop for the interest rates that we can earn. Currently, the process is, myself on Google or talking to our bank or talking to the MFA and to see what products they have and what rates they're offering, which is actually quite a bit of work, very manual and time consuming. But there's actually software out there that a lot of other municipalities are using. Last time I spoke with this one software in particular, they had 60 municipalities signed up. And software allows you to type in how much money you have, how long you have it for. It'll send that information out to several Canadian banks that are all approved under the community charter. And then within a day or so, they'll return their rates and you can just kind of pick the best one. It's really nice. And then it's free to use. Their fees are all paid by the banks. And so I added some language there, and I think section 9 of the investment policy that just allows for the use of these softwares and whatnot. And that's really all I have on the investment policy. The timing of this is kind of nice, given that property tax deadline is Tuesday, so this is kind of our high cash period for the city. And so for me, cash management is top of mind and making sure we get the best interest rate, which helps our reserves and helps our operating budget. And also, I believe this software will help with diversification of our portfolio, which is always good. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burdett. Councilor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just feels like we had the exact same conversation this time last year. Just what has changed since last year? Have we made any progress on this?
For clarity, you mean in terms of the policy itself?
Policy as well as the use of software.
Right. So I mean, this time last year, I was in discussion with this one software in particular, and then determined that we needed to bring forward the investment policy. At the time, the rates were performing extremely well in our bank account and MFA. We earned just right around 6% all year last year, which was better than any product I could find. And so I didn't, I guess last fall, I didn't really rush this. I kind of saved it for this year. Especially as interest rates are trending downwards, I thought it was more prudent to do it right away to try and secure the best rates we can.
Further?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a quick follow-up. What does it entail to have a formal investment policy? Like what's the work plan look like at a high level?
So, I mean, to create this, as I said, I just went on the Government Finance Officer website. I spoke to a few of my colleagues to see what they had in their investment policy. And I've spoken about this a lot before in that, attentive cash management is kind of important to me and a hobby of mine in my personal life. And so we were already doing things that are in a good investment policy. I just wanted to have it formalized so that, council can own it and have an annual review process. So, to answer your question, in terms of a work plan to create this, I spent the last month and a half getting this report ready, kind of on the side of my desk alongside audit and budget and all that stuff. Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. I've got two questions that are a bit more perhaps technical in nature. Section 7, we identified DBRS as the credit rating agency that we use in our assessments. And I'm just curious why that credit rating agency is chosen.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hamilton. I will have to bring that back to you. I'll do a little more research and I'll send like a briefing note out later this week.
Okay.
Yeah,
And one more.
Further?
Section 12, I'm not sure if there's just something that's missing, but there's a sentence that says the benchmark rates of return shall be : and then nothing. So is that intentionally blank or?
I had the same question.
Thanks for that, Councillor Hamilton. I'm sure that that's a typo and I left out a number. I can bring that back to you, maybe amended, or we can I have to look to Corporate Officer Daniel to see if we need to fix that tonight or.
Just bear with me one moment. I'm just bringing up the section. But we can definitely amend. Sorry. Need more coffee. We can definitely amend and adopt the policy tonight. We don't have to take it away and bring it back.
Yeah, and as I am definitely open to feedback on this policy itself. In my head, there's no real rush to adopting this. It doesn't change the practice, and I am going to explore this software more, especially as I said, now what rates are trending downward. I want to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck, especially this time of year.
Councillor Audie Kelly and then Councillor Nixon.
Thanks, Your Worship. I really appreciate, Director Burdett, your hobby of cash attentiveness. Maybe it'll rub off on me. Honestly, I like that you are thinking of formalizing it as a policy. Like, I know from everything you're saying, you're doing all these things now. I think it's good to have policies. So I like your approach and I appreciate the work that you've done on it, especially when you've had to do it off the side of your desk from your other work.
Thank you for that observation. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. So no, we're not going to put on block 2021 or block 31 anymore. Just joking for the public. Yeah, no, I like the objectives. I like the safety and I like being foremost and then liquidity and lastly, return on investment. I like that sort of format going through it. I did have a question about the 6.1 internal financing. And it said the city may, as approved by bylaw, internally finance borrowings. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's just like the internal borrowing. So looking at 6.1, if we needed a bunch of money for a new blank, right, as we do in this community, could we borrow it from any of our reserves, or is it, because I know that it specifies reserves, or just one reserve or many reserves, or is this just smoke and mirrors?
Okay, choose your words carefully, Councillor.
Thanks, Councillor Nixon. That's a great question. If a community wanted a new fire hall, say, that is an option to borrow from other reserves, and it would form part of the larger funding strategy for that asset. The rules around that are that if you borrow from another reserve, you have to pay it back with interest. So it's in essence like borrowing from external, but obviously you're borrowing internal. And then also you have to have enough money in that other reserve to be able to fund what that reserve is intended for. So that would all form part of the 20-year capital plan to be able to answer that in more detail. But I suspect future funding strategies will have a mix of that option.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. With the internal funding strategy, how would we determine or choose the interest rate that we would be charging back to those other reserves? Is there like a standard formula, or do you just choose prime rate?
Thanks, Councillor Hamilton. Just off the top of my head, I can confirm this, but believe the standard is to use the MFA, current MFA borrowing rate for things like that, which is the most relevant rate that we have for municipality.
And I had a similar question, was almost identical to Councillor Nixon's question, but have we at the city of Fernie done internal financing in the past, or were we any circumstance where we could do that historically?
If I can, when I started with the city of Fernie, we were very transparent about redeveloping our financial system because we did internal financing to fund the public works or the operations facility. Our challenge with that is that was done in a way that didn't follow the legislation by only doing that internal borrowing by bylaw, only doing it for reserves that could also fully fund their intended purposes, and it didn't repay that information with it, or that borrowing internally with interest. And so we had to, that is why we initiated the short-term borrowing to repay that inappropriate internal debt and complete the funding for that fire hall.
Public works.
Or I mean, sorry, operations facility, the public works facility. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And just highlights all the more why we need a clarity of policy. So thank you for that, Mr. Burdett. I had a couple of other questions. And I apologize because I don't know where it's referenced in here, but it references other investors other than yourself inside the organization. And who would those investors be?
I mean, that's there, you know, if something happens to me and then Deputy Director of Finance gets sworn in as the finance officer, that's what that language is for.
So just if you win the lottery and quit tomorrow, for example, or your prudent cash management allows you to quit tomorrow.
I do it for the love of it. So.
Thank you, Mr. Burdett. And forgive me, this sentence in 2.1.2 market risk, also limiting the term of investments and when it makes sense, diversifying the holdings to include investments that values are not correlated. I'm not even sure what that it means.
1 second, Mayor Milligan. So that sentence in essence is saying, you know, the MFA has they have 4 or 5 products we can choose in. One is more of a long-term, slightly higher risk, not like a high-risk product, but it you know, it can fluctuate.
Yeah.
And that's the definition of market risk.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we don't put all of our basket money.
Yeah.
in
So I
that
got
basket.
the diversifying part, but what does it mean? The investments that values are not correlated. Correlated to what?
Councillor Amadeus looks like he wants to chime in on this one. But, okay. But so I think like the point is when you diversify, you're not correlating all of your baskets to that one market risk.
Oh, okay.
If that one.
So you don't set a value and then diversify according to that value. You can move up and down depending on the number of baskets you're choosing from.
That's right. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was it for me. Any other questions from council? Councilor Ravenous.
Just wanted to add, Your Worship, just, you know, you can think of, you know, buying US equities on one hand and say Japanese bonds on the other, assuming that Japanese economy is, you know, whatever their borrowing costs in their government is uncorrelated with what's happening in S&P 500. So that way they're not related to each other.
Yeah.
And that way you're actually decreasing your overall risk.
Yeah, no, I
what it
appreciate
is.
that now. Yeah, that you, they're not interconnected or they have no reliance on one another. Yeah, no, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Any other questions? Councilor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Give me a second to formulate this here. First off, I'd like to point out that any money that we receive through prudent cash management is money we're not taking from a taxpayer at some point. So that's pretty excellent. I just want to remark that this feels really significant to me, and I can't put my finger on exactly why. It's sort of like there's a reason why we have different ledgers and different tracking. The internal borrowing kind of just feels odd to me. I can understand it. The rationale behind the interest rates and stuff, like, I don't know. I'm in favor of this just because we've got a good track record of financial management, and codifying that I think is great. I just think I have a lot of questions for later that aren't related to passing this or how we're operating. I don't quite understand why we need to charge ourselves interest is, I guess, what I'm getting at here.
Based on what we've heard, I think it's a legislated requirement.
It is, and but if I can try to describe it more clearly, yeah, I mean, if you use your roads reserve to fund a building, you have to pay that road reserve back, but it's not, you can't, if you were to pay it back with no interest, that would be I actually might take 30 seconds to formulate my answer to your well-formulated question.
Well, you'd be setting that reserve back, right? Like, because it is currently earning interest. And if you didn't replenish that interest, you've robbed from Peter to pay Paul, effectively.
Yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. Thank you.
Councillor Ravenous.
It's the opportunity cost, Your Worship.
Yes,
what you're
exactly
getting at,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. I knew there was a catchy phrase for it.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. So sorry to mire things in my confusion there for a moment.
No, I think that's a great question, and it provides the clarity we all need in this kind of policy. I think that's a really good question.
Yeah, and you had mentioned, Councillor Shoesmith, that this feels significant, and it is. And this actually ties back to Councillor Ramadas's question. There's a lot of like basic financial management processes that the city was missing since I started, and this is the next one that I've wanted to tackle. So, and there's more to come.
Any other questions for Mr. Burdett? Seeing none, I'll ask Ms. Daniels to read the, I guess, amended recommendation.
Yes, if I could just get clarification. So we will have a resolution that will be the City of Fernie Investment Policy CP 2024-001 be amended to, and I just wanted to grab for certain clarification on what council wanted to amend it to.
Yeah, it was, and I'm sorry, I just closed the document. It was, Councillor Nixon, do you remember the section? 12.0 performance measurement. The benchmark rates of return shall be : and then it.
Would you be able to provide clarity? Is it just the colon is gone, or is there a number?
No, I did mean to put 5% in there, but you know that number will change as part of our annual review, as we'll assess how our investments have done, which way the interest rates are trending, and I thought because they are trending down, I thought 5% was a reasonable estimate for the next 6 months. Now, I do plan to have the annual review as kind of part of Q4 update, Q4 financial update. We'll look at this policy and investments.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Just as you know, as a language piece for the policy, do we want it to be a specific percent, or do we want it to be you know, benchmark rates of return shall be based upon interest rates of the Bank of Canada, or you know, something that's a little bit more open-ended or open to be flexible to fluctuations?
Yeah, I'd look to Mr. Burdett to answer that, because I understand the value of setting a benchmark, like a specific number, but if you could speak to your preference, Mr. Burden.
I mean, my preference is, I mean, realistically, it won't change how the actual investments perform.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just, it'll be like our base number, kind of like our budget that we compare against, and we'll look at maybe why we've differed from that in either direction. So, you know, if 5% feels like a reasonable number for council to use as a benchmark, then that's, we can pick. But, and the reason I pick 5 is because that's right around current, like MFA loaning rates.
Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. I tend to agree with what Councillor Hamilton is saying, like, you know, some kind of language around risk-free rate of return, right? Like the entire Wall Street is built on that concept of risk-free rate of return, which is US Treasury bonds, for example. Keeping that vague will actually serve its purpose very well, I feel. Like 5%, who knows? We are not interest rate traders here too.
No, I appreciate that, but I also appreciate what Mr. Bird is saying, like giving it a starting point.
Yeah.
In advance of annual review, so that we can see how we performed against that benchmark in 2024, 2025. Are we above, below? You know, did we bring in? I suppose it just gives us a number to measure against. I'm not sure, you know, pegging it against a floating number provides any sort of value. Further?
I agree, Your Worship, with what you're saying. It's just that many of those things are not in our control. That's the thing.
No, I know. I 100% appreciate that. But what would we then be measuring it against in your mind? Our performance in 2024, say.
Bond yield.
Bond market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple. That's what everybody does.
Councillor Hamilton?
I'm wondering if, because we want to set the function of this section is to set a benchmark, to pick a number. And as Councillor Ramirez has correctly identified, like rates of return, the risk-free rate of return is going to fluctuate throughout the course of the year. So, you know, maybe from a policy language perspective, it's we pick the MFA's rate of return on January 1st of the calendar year, and we use that as our benchmark for the following year.
Mr. Burdett?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. If we wanted to tie it to MFA, I didn't prepare their return rates, but they're actually, when I typed this report, rates were higher quite a bit. Now the 10-year lending rate for MFA is 4.23%. Average Bank of Canada bond yields, which is similar to what we can invest in, is right now is 4%. So, you know, maybe 4% is more accurate number at this point.
Councillor Adi Kelly? Okay. Further?
Well, just as a question of procedure, if we were to just say 5% now to complete this policy, do we need to then come back for an investment policy amendment next year to change that benchmark rate, if that's what we're going to do, since that's what's codified in the policy? Or is the way that the policy is currently worded give enough allowance to our CFO or our investment executor? Well, I can't remember what the title for the person involved controlling the investments, to just make that determination at any given time what our benchmark is.
As I understand it, the policy also codifies an annual review, so it would appropriately be amended every year accordingly.
That's right. Yep. And early in the year too, alongside our Q4 update, financial update.
Okay. Do we have a consensus then on the, is it MFA number? Perhaps you can help Ms. Daniel with the wording.
Sure. You can tie it. would be tied to the MFA indicative lending rate, indicative 5-year lending rate, which is 3.86%, or 10-year lending rate, which is 4.23%.
So it would be the MFA's 5-year lending rate of return. I just want to make sure I have the language correct.
They call it the indicative lending rate.
5-year indicative lending. Right. All right. I believe I have a resolution that the City of Fernie Investment Policy CP 2024-001 be amended for Section 12 to read benchmark rates of return shall be the MFA's 5-year indicative lending rate for the calendar year. I believe that makes sense. And it would also include and that the policy be adopted as amended.
Okay.
So you could do it all in one.
Okay. Mover, Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Ramirez. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you for that, Mr. Burdett.
Thank you.
And then there is the second recommendation.
Yes, that council direct staff to implement an annual review process of policy CP 2024-001.
Moved by Councillor Ramirez, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any further discussion? Councillor Ramirez.
I have one point, Your Worship. I know I'm a politician, not a staff member, but I just wanted to say one thing about cash management here. I don't know if it's even pertinent here, but when I was thinking about risk-free rate of return and all those things are not in our control. But what is in our control is actually the cost of many of these financial products.
Mm-hmm.
And a CFO can correct me, but when I was in UBCM or one of the other things, I can't remember, we did speak to the MFA and we looked at some of the financial products there. And I just remember some of the products management fees were pretty high when compared to an ETF that I could buy in my TFSA account, like at least 10-15 basis points difference. And that can be a difference between, I don't know, $50,000 to $100,000 in savings. So anyway, again, this is not my wheelhouse. I know the CFO knows these things better than I do, but I think having a close eye on what we pay for these financial products is far more achievable goal than thinking about rate of returns, because that we have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further comments? We did move and second that one, didn't we? No, not at all. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Burdett. This moves us along to item 13.1, notice of motion by Councillor Shoesmith. We don't really have a clear process around this, so we're going to, I think, do the following. We'll get Ms. Daniel to read the notice of motion, then I'll ask Councillor Shoesmith to speak to it, and then we'll have a discussion and then move and second it from there.
Be it resolved that the City of Fernie officially resume calling July 1st Canada Day and resume observing all the rituals that identify, celebrate, and respect the symbols of Confederation. Understanding that being inclusive, diverse, and unified is an intrinsic property of our nation, and that we aren't here to reinvent what it means to be Canadian, but to unify and commemorate the nation that we are and have been.
Councillor Shoesmith, if you don't mind speaking to your motion.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Most communities just have a Canada Day, and it's just a party that all Canadians can participate in. I feel that mucking with some things in an attempt to be more inclusive actually points out our differences more than bringing us together. And I think that the spirit of the day should be one of celebrating our country. I'm also just, I find it smacks of a little bit of hubris to seek to monkey with such things as a mere municipality. I think what it's been historically and what it is in many other places should be just fine for us. Just a happy, unified, together party that all Canadians can be part of and be happy with.
Thank you. Other comments from council? Councillor Amadas.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just wanted to comment from being a new Canadian. I got my citizenship, about 8 or 10 years ago, I can't remember. It's again like for someone like myself, my wife, who did not grow up here, becoming a Canadian was a pretty big deal. We look forward to July 1st as a day where we just enjoy the festivities for sure, but also recognize that we are proud Canadians. And I understand the intent behind calling it Canada Together Day, and there are many layers to the whole conversation there. I totally appreciate it, but the reason why this many immigrants like myself come to this great country is because we chose to be here, and we are proud to be Canadians now. So when you actually call it Canada Day, it is a together day. So it just feels like calling it Canada Together Day is a bit of an oxymoron. So anyway, and also when I'm thinking about my own kid growing up, I just feel like we shouldn't normalize lack of patriotism as a going thing. You know what I mean? Like it's she's growing up and thinking Canada Together Day and everything else that we do that is not around the main Canadian symbols, but other things is okay. Like I just feel like we may be underplaying the importance of patriotism with our kids. And again, when I'm saying patriotism, I'm not saying like chest beating,
No.
very brash kind of way, but just that subtle pride that you have being a Canadian. I think we just need to recognize and celebrate that on one day. There are 364 other days where I can talk about other causes also. So I appreciate Councillor Shoesmith bringing this to the table, and I'm looking forward to more conversation around this.
Thank you. Other comments from council? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I'm be perfectly blunt. I'm quite challenged with this notice of motion. The shift that we made wasn't just the municipality, the city of Fernie. Many municipalities across the country made this shift as an act of reconciliation. Reconciliation is one of the key aspects of our council priorities, and so I'm not sure how moving forward with this continues to help our council priorities of reconciliation and creating a more inclusive community that supports all Canadians, whether they be new immigrants, colonialists, or First Nations.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just curious, what would just a Canada Day look like in just per se versus a Canada Together Day? What would it look like?
Thank you, Councilman. More or less the same. I feel that the nomenclature is important. We have one day a year to celebrate our nation, to be proud. And there are other days for things like reconciliation. And that's not a thing that we're burying in history at all. But at no juncture would a kid growing up today have any moment of unabashed pride in their nation. And I also feel as a country, we should actually take some time to draw together and focus solely on the good, because we focus so much on the negative all the time. And the one day Canada Day should be put aside just to celebrate that with all Canadians. Everybody's welcome. And it's not to snub anybody, it's to bring one big tent that brings us together instead of pointing out our differences and pointing out grievances. Because that's not how you create a big tent that everybody's part of. That's how you fracture people. And as far as the actual goings on of the day, I think the regular usual stuff is fine. It's more about the underlying spirit and intent of the thing. It's been a few decades since I've seen anything Canadian just simply be proudly Canadian without trying to list a laundry list of every possible archetype and subgroup you could name. And I think that does a solid disservice because you'll infinitely fracture down that path, whereas we should be one country. And that country, Canada, is, as I said in the notice of motion, intrinsically, what's the word, brings everybody together. Brain fart, my apologies, but
No. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. I'm challenged with this as well. I really like what the city of Fernie has done with Canada Together. I really have a lot of respect for the Tanaha that come up here every single year and join us for that day. We are living on their lands. It was pointed out to us at the border walk on Friday, we are living in their lands. And it just seems to be, I mean, we do our, it's part of the reconciliation, it's calls to action. It creates cultural awareness and understanding. I think it brings unity and inclusion, and it has recognition, respect, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's all these things that just bring that this enables us to do in our community. And I'm after going down and walking across the border with our neighbors to the south, it was I'm actually a little bit, what do I say, taken aback by this notice of motion. So it makes me a little sad.
Councillor Ennis.
I have to say that I do agree with the overall intent of the motion. Just kind of the language used to justify it would be the biggest thing where it says, but to unify and commemorate the nation that we are and have been. I want to challenge Councillor Shoesmith in switching your perspective rather than thinking of referring to this as Canada Together Day being a bad thing that doesn't allow for patriotism. Rather think of it as Canada has evolved where in society, segregation was embedded into society. That was the cultural norm. Whereas now we live in a very diverse country, and that growth, I suppose, the growth is why it would be referred to as Canada Together Day. And I think that's what people around the table were trying to get to, was thinking about it more in a sense of growth, if that makes sense.
Thank you for that. Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Councillor Ennis. Since Councillor McIsaac isn't here to provide a somewhat contrarian, one of the things, and I'm not sure if I'm going to articulate this well, I am a firm believer in reconciliation. I really am. But I sometimes feel like Canada Together splits the focus. Like reconciliation, I feel like that I'm glad we have the National Day for Reconciliation, because I feel like it deserves its own day that's just about that and not about the mix of the colonialism. And I'm not articulating it really well, but sometimes I wonder if it takes away from reconciliation the way we celebrate it now rather than honors reconciliation. Sorry, Mayor Milligan,
No, I think you've articulated that quite well.
I want us to move forward still with commemorating the national. I do want to see us do something on September 30th. I don't want to lose that.
Thank you. I very much appreciated Councillor Youth Councillor Annis's perspective, because I tried to capture that in my comments at at our celebration last year, that countries, like people, learn from their mistakes and they grow and they become accordingly more tolerant and more inclusive. I'm challenged for a couple of reasons. One is the date. We have invited and have confirmed the attendance of our Indigenous neighbors on July 1st, and we have a reconciliation walk that is a significant event, not just for the community, for their community, and it has gained a bit of local recognition as a standout event. In fact, the mayors from our two neighboring communities have inquired as whether they could attend the walk. But I also want to say I understand the intent, and I don't want to minimize the intent of your motion, Councillor. And I do also recognize, as Councillor Audia Kelly has said, there is a specific day in this country to honor reconciliation. My challenge tonight is making a declaration as council that effectively, well, first of all, I don't want to speak for anyone, so I don't know how it would be interpreted, but my preference overall, and I'll look to you, Councillor Shoesmith, is on the eve of our celebration, I would not want to give insult. And I wonder ultimately if you would be comfortable, and then, you take the time you need to think about it, tabling your motion until such time as we've had the celebration that we're on the eve of, and we have an opportunity to have a conversation with our Indigenous neighbors and partners on the nature of our relationship to date, how we can work together to continue to improve that relationship, such that, as I say, we don't cause insult and we don't cause a significant injury to that relationship in the interim.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. And to the extent I've thrown a spanner into your works, I apologize.
Not at all.
Several things. Where to start? Of course, I would be more than happy for this to roll ahead, next year. I understand, things are pretty tight for time and I wouldn't want to push that. But I would add that whether or not it's Canada Together or Canada Day, we should be inviting everybody as they are Canadian, as a part of Canada. And I don't think that should change whether or not they're invited to participate or whether or not they're even center stage. I think that that's fantastic. I would be happy to table this until after the current celebrations, but I have a feeling it will probably just get shot down at the table here today anyways. I'm comfortable with tabling it until after the celebrations. If that eases things. And I'd like to thank everybody for taking this as in good faith from me. I would also like to point out, though, that the effects of being unable to be unabashedly proud is shown in our youth who can't really describe our country anymore without couching it in all sorts of apologia. It's almost like if you have to say something good about Canada, you have to attach it to an apology or an acknowledgement of some dark deed. And I think that's regrettable. That doesn't actually build the foundation for a strong and healthy mindset. But I would be happy to table this motion for now.
Yeah, and I look to council. I don't want to put anybody in a position, like if council is comfortable with that, allows us, and I would actually like turn to our corporate officer to ensure it comes back. Because it's not my intent to shoot it down or my intent is to allow us to have a broader conversation. And it's a challenge because I 100% agree in terms of the notion of inclusivity, but others' relationship with Canada, and I'm not, to your point, trying to be an apologist, is fraught, as a colonizing nation. And so having worked in this frame for some years, I feel I'd like to handle this delicately and ensure that we take the right steps as a community. We don't damage our reconciliation journey or set it back in a way that is potentially irreparable. My preference is to be open and honest with all our partners and ensure that they understand the direction we're taking, and that they're meant to be part of it in whatever way they choose to be part of it. Other comments from council or? Councilor Ramirez?
Thanks, Your Worship. That was very well put. I know it's a very delicate subject. There's lots of layers to this. I'm really glad that we are having this conversation and look forward to a future time when we can actually have a more wholesome discussion. And I appreciate Shoesmith saying that, this is probably not the right time to motion this, but after July 1st, maybe we can come back to this.
Yeah, I think this is a very valuable conversation, and I'm glad you raised it because, I, for one, as you'll be aware, I published an article in the Fernie Fix about the power and the importance of the Canadian flag, and that reclaiming it for all Canadians, because there's a sense amongst many Canadians that it's no longer a symbol that we can all rally around. And I want to get back to a time where when you pass the Canadian flag, you recognize it as solely as a symbol to be proud of as a nation. And so I'm in no way trying to minimize how you framed this, the importance for you. So I appreciate you bringing it forward. Councilor Hamilton?
Thank you. Yeah, I too am very much in support of this conversation continuing, recognizing that we need to make sure our First Nations partners, neighbors, friends are part of this conversation as well. As Councillor Nixon pointed out, we heard loud and clear at the border walk, this land was taken from them forcibly. And so to not include them as we're discussing what Canada means to them, what Canada means to us, and how we as a region, as communities move forward, we can't do that without
we can't do that in isolation.
Listening to their voices as well.
Understood. Councillor Roddy Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I really like the way you explained that. And I would like to continue the conversation too. And I really would also like to talk to our Indigenous partners about how they envision September 30th to look too. Because that should be the sole focus of that day for me. So I want to see, I'd really like to know how Nisukin and her people feel about that day and what they want it to look like.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's to Councillor Hamilton's point, it has to be a very fulsome conversation. I agree. Thank you, Councillor Shoesmith. So can we then consider it tabled?
There is actually no motion on the floor. So while I did read it, it was not.
It wasn't moved.
Moved. Thank you. I was like firsted. That's not the word. It was not moved nor seconded. So I do have a proposed resolution for council consideration that this item be brought back to a future meeting for further discussion, which is a bit vague.
Yeah, I'd like to set a date actually for
Okay.
that meeting if we could. Counselor Sue Smith?
If I may, we should just keep it on the back burner and slide it into the first meeting that's really light on content. That just might be the most efficient thing to do here.
Okay. So you're happy with that resolution, the way it's read? Okay,
Yes, thank you.
thank you. Could you read it one more time? Sorry.
Yes, that this item be brought back to a future meeting for further discussion.
Mover? Counselor Sue Smith, seconded by Counselor Ramdass. Any further conversation? I just want to say thank you for all those perspectives that have been brought to the table, and thank you, Counselor Sue Smith, for raising it as an issue. So I appreciate it. All those in favor? Any opposed? Or was that unanimous? Sorry, I was trying to capture all of it. Thank you, everybody. This brings us to item 13.2, a notice of motion by Councilor Ramdass regarding the fire hall. And I'll ask Ms. Daniel to read this one.
Be it resolved that the total capital outlay for the proposed fire hall be no more than $12 million. Recognizing that there has been progress with pre-work, be it also resolved that the staff revert to the first principles of having a utilitarian fire hall that fits the needs of the city while keeping the protective services personnel safe and operational. If this means reducing scope, size, and amenities to fit the above budget, that the council direct the staff to plan for the same. Recognition also be given that a future satellite fire hall may be built to increase capacity of the city's fire services.
Thank you. Councilor Ramdass, would you like to speak to this?
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks for the opportunity to drop this motion. Few things, Your Worship. Really, some may wonder why I have chosen $12 million as the estimate. So what I basically did was looked at some of the earlier financial information that we got from the staff from 2023 December. And I looked at what a likely tax increase might look like in different scenarios, a 10% raise or a 20% raise. When I looked at a 10% raise, that came up to about $12 million in capital that we can spend in the first year, and assuming that we borrow it all and not dip into reserves. And that calculates to about $275 per household per year at the start of the amortization. So I just thought that, that would be a good benchmark to aim for, knowing that, it is a critical infrastructure that we are committed to. We need to keep our people safe and community safe as well. Another thing I wanted to point to Your Worship is, again, I know I was not there, but many of my colleagues and yourself as well with staff had visited Creston to look at another fire hall option. And we came back knowing a little bit about what the estimates were and what the size of the place looks like. I just wanted to kind of operationalize that, like what our learnings was. I wanted to put it in a motion so that we create sort of a boundary condition here, because again, I do not know what conversations have happened in community working group. I know I have access to the minutes of all the meetings. Apologize, I haven't read them line by line, but my sense is us as council, if we can provide some kind of boundary condition for the staff, it would be easier for the staff to go and execute on the plan. And in the absence of a boundary condition like that, I just feel like we could be chasing a lot of things that may or may not actually help us in solving this particular issue. If it's I don't know, I'm throwing a number out there. If it's a $23 million project, there is going to be a lot of financial risk for the community, as well as even bigger risk is that we won't have an operational fire hall because there will be chances that it might lose the referendum. So just keeping in mind that, there are competing priorities. And honestly, I wrote this motion even before our community center issue came up. So what I'm suggesting here is, again, if we have a boundary condition, staff can go back, look at what they can do to just keep it a very utilitarian, basic fire hall on the lines of what Christian has, and then they can go back and change their plans too. Like I understand a lot of pre-work has gone into it. There might be disruption, but the more time we invest now, there are better chances that we can get a functioning fire hall before 2026. That was that. And another point, Your Worship, is again, we have chosen the site for the fire hall. And as you remember, there is also rehabilitation work that might potentially have to happen with the ballpark. I don't know what the costing is on that either. So given that there is another layer of complexity here, it would be wise on our part to kind of set a sort of a boundary limitation, and then for staff to go back and see how they can fit to the budget. I know I'm kind of imposing a sort of a restriction, but I think in time of our fragile reserve conditions, as well as fragile capital requirement for the next several years and decade, this would be the right thing to do for us right now.
Thank you. Comments from council. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. I understand what this, that I can appreciate the financial prudence. I totally do. I just think that it handcuffs us and it doesn't account for what we call future proofing or generational thinking. It's just, I listened to CBC this morning. They're raising $11 million in Nelson for a climbing wall, and that is not post-disaster construction, $11 million. So I think this is just too restrictive. I agree with the, staying on top of it. And, I'm not sure about the utilitarian part of it. I think it would be, I'm not sure if how that works, but overall, I won't be in favor of this notice of motion.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Just some color for the discussion here, if I may have a two-parter. Through the mayor to staff, what's our current borrowing capacity? What's our limit right now?
If I can just have a couple minutes, I'll get that number.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a number we should keep in mind when we're having this discussion, because we are now in a position where the community will expect from us a fire hall, a ball diamond, a community center, and probably several other big ticket items that won't really be up for negotiation. And I think that we should set our thinking in line with the timeline in which we'll have to deal with these issues. When you're confronted with a threat, your forebrain shuts down. You think quickly, you don't think long-term, because you're confronted with an immediate threat. If we build a 100-year fire hall and then run into other critical issues in 5 or 10 years that we then don't have the borrowing capacity or cash on hand to deal with, that 100-year fire hall is almost meaningless. What we need to do is place this in the context of all the other things that are going to come up in the next 10 to 15 years in the face of the rest of our infrastructure deficit. And it would be better from that standpoint to have a fire hall that is utilitarian and then perhaps a satellite, or have a fire hall that we could then upgrade later in order to husband those limited resources for other critical issues, perhaps relating to our water or sewer, which a fire hall is almost useless without.
Thank you. Councillor Adi Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Utilitarian to me, just to clarify, possibly with Councillor Ramadas, and then I have a couple of other things to. Utilitarian in my world means needs, not wants. Like it's what do we need versus additional items that we might like to have, but maybe can't afford. Like I'd like to drive a Maserati, but I can afford a Ford, right? The Ford is going to do all the things I need it to do. So that's what utilitarian means to me. Also, the borrowing capacity, I think, is a concern. I think it's a really valid concern. And I have to disagree about the future proofing because depending on how the community grows and where it grows, we may be likely in the position of needing a satellite hall. And if we build smart and we build in such a way that we can expand the fire hall if we need to, I think we are future proofing. The other thing I would like to ask Director Burdett, CFO, if that's possible, what would it look like? Just let's use a round figure. Let's say we borrowed $10 million. What does that look like over time for the taxpayer? So Councillor Ramadas, you said 275 at 12. So that's the beginning of the amortization. Does it stay like that? Is it like a mortgage? Like, does it go down? Does it go up? How does that work, CFO?
Thank you for the questions. First one. Our borrowing capacity is equal to 4,363,436. Those would be annual payments that we are allowed to make. So obviously the amount we could borrow is much higher depending on whatever the interest rate is.
Sorry, Mr. Burnett, what was that number again?
4.36 million.
Thank you.
And that also factors in our current $600,000 short-term loan, which 2025 is the last year for that. So that increases by 600K when that one's done. And then in terms of borrowing $10 million at today's interest rates on the MFA, that would be an annual payment of $591,000, which translates to a 6.3% tax increase.
Further, Your Worship, if that's okay.
Further, yeah.
Now, is that for the life? Sorry, Director Burdett, is that for the life of the loan or will that fluctuate?
I believe it, I'll have to check, but I believe it fluctuates mainly. Well, I mean, after 10 years, we would have to refinance the loan for one, so the interest rates would change then. But also if you borrow from the MFA, they invest, how do I put this? They invest the interest that you pay them, and then they actually put any money that you earn on what they invest back into the loan. So that also fluctuates payments as we refinance. But for the first 10 years, you would basically be locked into that 591,000.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I'm in support of giving staff direction of kind of a target figure that we want to achieve. Locking in and saying we'll pay no more than 12 million when we don't currently have enough information to know what a utilitarian structure is going to cost. You know, is 3 bays, a fire pole and a washroom going to end up costing 13 million with post-disaster requirements? The other thing that this notice of motion doesn't factor in and that I'm not hearing around the table is, you know, us analyzing business cases. You know, do we lock it in at $12 million and then not put a vapor barrier in the building because that would cost too much? Do we invest another $500,000 and put solar panels on the roof of the building, because that then reduces our operating costs by 60, 70, 80% over the life of the building? There's just too many unknowns at this stage for me to be able to support saying a hard and fast limit of $12 million, but I can certainly appreciate the intent of guiding staff with this is kind of what we are comfortable and what we feel the community might be comfortable with. But we need to get more information. We need to go through the design process. We need to know what the remediation for the land or the geotechnical prep will be before we can start talking about specifics.
Councillor Shoesmith and then Councillor Amadas.
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. We have an uncomfortable reality to face is that as we do these needed projects and they stack up and overlap, the amounts we borrow from them are going to add and add and add. We're going to have 3 or 4 of these things sitting out there at, 6.3% tax increase each or 8. You start to get 3, 4, 5 projects done. That's pretty huge. That's going to be very uncomfortable. That's going to be a long-term crushing tax burden. And there's no way out of it, although paring it down and mitigating any piece of it where possible, I think should be our aim as council, because you start to think, say it was a $20 million fire hall. We were locked in on that loan and then the interest rates went up, or we had a serious issue with our sewer plant, or we needed to expand our water supply, or. Not even going into the work required for a ball diamond or a community center, or heaven forbid, something with the rink or any of our other properties. All these things are hanging out there. And if we can take a step back and realize that, well, we would like the large fire hall for 100 years, we might not be able to have that and other things that we need. We might have to instead scale that back to what we can actually achieve. And I'm not going to comment on what exactly the number should be, but we should aim for lower rather than higher, knowing that in the future we can expand if we have the room to, because we might run out of that room. And then we might face serious infrastructure issues that we can't fix without provincial help or without serious service outages.
Thank you. Councillor Amadas.
Thanks for your worship. One of my colleagues said it is very restrictive, and it is restrictive. I realize that, and it is intentional why it is restrictive that way. And also to Councillor Hamilton's point about what the right number is. Again, while I did some work with CFO's spreadsheet from last year, I also want to say that Christian Fire Hall was in the same ballpark as this one. I believe it was like $11 million, was it not? So $12 million is not some fancy number that we have pulled out of the hat. It is actually something realistic from a community that is similar sized as ours. So the notion that, this is some number that just is floating around is not accurate, actually. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon and Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we keep on talking about ifs and ands that are negative, looking into the future, and about this and that, and let's think about positive ifs and ands. Municipal Growth Fund, from FCM, new, 1% of GST or whatever. We can't solve all these problems ourselves. We're going to have to go, for all these other things that are happening, our liquid waste management plant, we're going to have to go to the province or to the federal government. We're not by ourselves. There's an infrastructure deficit across the country that is gargantuan. And the feds know that, and the provinces know that, and they're going to help us out. I know that. We're not by ourselves.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. 2 things. The other aspect we have to take into account here is, we need to get our firemen into a proper fire hall instead of squatting as they are currently. That won't happen if we take something to a referendum and it fails. That'll be deferred for at least another year, probably 2. And I don't think that's doing them the correct service. I would also add to Councillor Nixon's point, yes, absolutely, a lot of these problems are bigger than we are. But I would also add that aggregating everybody with the same scale of problems all in one pot doesn't change the math. It just makes the equation bigger. The country faces this issue as well. And pushing it up a level doesn't make the math any better.
Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. One of the things my dad always said to me was, don't count your chickens before they hatch. So for me, like until those things were guaranteed to me, I wouldn't want to rely on them as sources of funding, because those things, there is a municipal growth framework that's been proposed. As far as I know, it isn't assented to or happening. So that, you know, concerns me as well. And I have to say that the majority of citizens that talk to me about the fire hall, there are some people who are very still upset about Prentice Park, but for the most part, it's the price. They are very concerned. And one of the things we learned from our engagement sessions that we've had, from our citizen satisfaction survey, affordability was one of the #1 things that we were told even during the election cycle. So we have to keep that in mind. We have to. So like, if our referendum fails, it's only going to cost more money. So I think if we can come up with a reasonable amount of money for a prudent, well thought out build that works for our safety and our firefighters and our community, that will pass a referendum, I think we need to really keep that in mind.
Councillor Nixon and then Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Worship. We don't know what the number is. We don't know what that number is. There was a number, a pie in the sky number of $22 million that was at this table that got leaked into the community, and everybody is hearing that number. Nobody's hearing any other numbers. We don't have a number yet for this fire hall, right? It's simple. And we keep on talking about failing the referendum. If we keep on talking like it's going to fail the referendum, it's going to fail because we're going to set that up, right? It's going to pass the referendum. How's that?
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I'm just going to say a final piece on this and then I'll be done with everybody's time. If we build something limited and leave that room, and then later the sky money comes to us, we can add everything we wish at that point. However, if we stretch expecting that money comes to us, and then it doesn't, we're going to be in some trouble. And I think that we should both be careful and pursue all the money we can grab. And when we get that money, absolutely, let's talk upgrades. But until that money is in hand, I think we should be careful and prudent.
Councillor Hamilton.
I just need to reiterate the point about trying to save a penny today and it's going to cost us $1 tomorrow. You know, yes, affordability is a major issue in this community, but let's not be blinded to the fact that things are not going to get cheaper in the future. And like I said, you know, if it's going to cost $500,000 million more to upgrade one aspect that can significantly reduce our operating costs, if we're talking about a 50 to 100 year life cycle building, that money adds up hugely. You know, there's a lot of business case and there's a lot of more information that we need on the design and the legislated requirements for a facility. Yes, I appreciate that $12 million is roughly a little bit less is what Creston's cost, and that's probably what we can expect the figure to be around. But again, we don't know. You know, I'm not a builder. I'm not involved in the construction trades. I don't know what post-disaster construction changes have happened, what the costs increases might have been in the last couple of years. So I'm in support of like going with a figure as guidance, but to put our foot down and say we can't go over this figure at this stage, I think it is trying to put the cart before the horse.
Councillor Audie Kelly and then Councillor Shoesmith.
Thanks, Your Worship. Not to put staff on the spot, but how are we progressing with the project? Just are we anywhere at like coming forward with some more information soon?
I'll look to Dustin Heisler to share a little bit of information, but I'll just say the last round of work with our consultant was specifically the chief reviewing the work as it's been building up in terms of the scope of work with that consultant, starting with the project goals and site selection, and then identifying sort of a flow of logic of what are the minimum standards required to meet NFPA standards, and then what, because of our operations, are required that may be above that, and then what are the nice to have elements that would help support current operations or provide enhancements to the hall. And so having those three streams, but always tying back to what are our minimum requirements, is the work currently wrapping up, and the consultant is working on their final report, and they're not yet at a point where we're reviewing like a 50% draft of that report. They're going to take, if we follow our current course of working to those minimum standards, then the reality of operating a full service fire department that supports the regional district with this many employees and these occupational health and safety requirements, that type of stuff. They will be going back to their costing consultants that they work with on costing through the early weeks of July. And we should be seeing something to provide final comments on a draft as staff and the project working group, and to be able to communicate that with the community working group as well near the end of July, which would then mean we'd be working at an earliest possible date to bring that final report from that consultant on what their conceptual design and cost considerations would be in August. Acknowledging that that is a bit behind schedule of where they'd like to be. Mr. Heisler has been working with them to really refine their scope and focus on ensuring that there's a really clear delineation between what is required by NFPA standards, what is required by our operational needs, and then what are the nice to have things. And is there anything else you'd like to add on that?
I honestly have nothing to add other than that, without any hiccups, we're hoping to bring something in mid-August to council.
Councillor Shoesmith and then Councillor Reminis.
Thank you. I'm almost done, I promise. It's a strong town's principle to make small bets rather than large bets. We're talking about this and expecting large amounts of growth, and we're talking about a 100-year fire hall type of deal, when we actually don't know that there will be that growth. I mean, we can be pretty sure, but it's safer and easier to make continue and repeated small bets than it is to make large bets and perhaps fail. I mean, should we build a fire hall that slightly exceeds our needs at the moment, and then we find it meeting or, reaching its capacity, a satellite hall or an addition at that point should be considered. I think that we may find ourselves going the other way for one reason or another. Like, history is not an upward line with no interruptions ever.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Councillor Reminis.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm not a builder or any expert in fire halls, but I have a stupid question here. Like, what does it take to just copy and paste Creston Fire Hall? Done. Could we do that?
I'll ask Mr. Heisler to respond, but they have a vastly different operating model than we do. So we could build it, but it would be a fire hall for the wrong service in the wrong community, meaning they have a different number of staff, they provide different services, they have different co-located partners,
They have
different number of people in the building.
BC ambulances in their building.
Yeah, so we could build their facility. We can anticipate 2 years worth of 30% per year cost increases on their facility as a wag, like a very wild guess based on what we see reported. But fundamentally, although it looks great and it has most of the functional things we like, they have a vastly different operating model, providing different services to a different population and regional district with different partners. So I don't know that it would be recommended as the right opportunity, as attractive as it is as a completed project.
Mr. Heisler or Chief Morgan, whoever wants wants to comment first?
I suspect the chief will expand upon this after me. So we're working with Arcadis on a needs-based fire hall for our complement. And so where we end up with that is going to be quite a bit different than where Creston ended up with theirs. To copy and paste theirs, I suspect we would have to go away and analyze the potential risks on all sorts of variables within their design. Like, that's a really tough question to unpack ad hoc in this meeting.
Chief?
Council, I appreciate the concern for cost. There's no doubt about it. That's been my concern right since the beginning. Just as background though, and council has said this from the beginning, is that we've kicked this down the road a long time. Even as far as my three previous predecessors have been trying hard to get this fire hall going, where it started at Chief Smich, which was under 5 million, all the way to Chief Ryder, which in 2018 in a JDA report was about 6.4 million. It's just hard to see this because we worked so hard to get the priority of the firefighters to be safe and health and safety be the main concern for the chiefs. And so we finally did it with my predecessor, moved everyone out. They were living in an environment that was not healthy and not safe to the point of being very dangerous. And so we did that. The issue now we have is that we're in a temporary location where our firefighters are a bit safer in the environment they're in, maybe a little bit more stressed because of what they have to do to be able to go on a call. But at the end of the day, now the community's, my concern is losing a little bit of safety, and that our response times are a little bit longer than what they should be according to NFPA. Saying all that, as much as CEO Bornowski appreciates that we've got different needs than Creston, I promise you, if you took Creston and stuck it in our backyard, I'd be extremely happy. And so I've pared it down probably further than Creston at this point with Arcadis. We haven't got the money. We haven't got the money sorted yet, but we've definitely pared it down to the minimum according to NFPA, WorkSafe, building code. They've done a lot of work on that over the last month. And I can promise you, this is no palace. This is no Taj Mahal. This is the need for Fernie. And so if you set a price, that is what it is. My feeling though is that, you know, with Creston, if you say it's 11 million, you got to remember too that a lot of that was pre-COVID. Things have gone crazy since COVID. And as you all know that, fire halls that were budgeted for 25 million are looking at 40 million now. They're not the same. And so that's just the nature of where we're at right now. In a lot of ways, it's hard that we're in the location we're at because people feel like we should be comfortable there where we can actually respond. We're getting to calls and so on. But at the end of the day, it's if the question is, if you took Creston and put it in Fernie, I'd be extremely happy.
I'm gonna ask Councillor Audia Kelly to speak, and then I'll make a few comments, and then I'm gonna ask for a mover and a seconder on this item. Councillor Audia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Actually, Chief, don't go away, if you don't mind. Could you just tell the community what NFPA is, just in case they don't know?
Yeah, so it's a code that gives guidance for anything that has to do with fire. So whether it's sprinkler systems, extinguishers, exiting, how many people can be in a building, training, all that kind of stuff. And then so part of it is what is meant to be used for anything that has to do with fire safety.
And can you just spell out the acronym for people, please?
National Fire Protection Association.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Councillor, for that clarification. So my comments on this item are shared by some folks around the room. I very much appreciate Councillor Ramadas's fiscal responsibility lens. That is not to be discounted. I think it's a very valuable lens. I think it's incredibly prudent. But I also share Councillor Hamilton's perspective that I don't have enough information yet. I don't have enough information to know what a base fire hall with no frills looks like or what it costs. Creston is a good example. Creston was finished. I'm sorry, Chief, when was Creston finished? Yeah, when did they start construction? Yeah, so there's a pre-COVID, a bill that started pre-COVID that is quite different than what we would need. And I very much appreciate the chief's candor that if we built that one, he'd be delighted with it. But in my mind, there's no way we could build that fire hall for $12 million. It's just not going to happen. We've talked about this at some length. We have as a community, kicked this problem down the road since 1979. We've heard a couple of figures tonight about, we could have done it for 5 million. We could have done it for 7 million or 6.7 million. Like the opportunity just keeps getting lost and the price tag just keeps getting bigger. From my perspective, I need to know what a base fire hall looks like. What is that going to cost us? What are the options for project delivery that contain costs to the greatest degree possible? Is it design, bid, build? Is it construction management? Is it integrated project delivery? Like there are all sorts of options there that will save us money and hold all those parties involved accountable to that number. So I just don't, I can't support this. I very much appreciate what you're doing here in terms of the constraints you're putting on it. But I would feel I would be doing a disservice to our firefighters who were not only living in unhealthy conditions, they work every day in unhealthy conditions. And I want to provide them with a healthy, affordable option that this community can support. And I just don't feel like I have enough information to provide these kind of strict guardrails at this juncture. I need to know more. When we know more, I'm not necessarily opposed to doing that, but I just don't know that we have enough information yet. And so I can't support this motion. With that, shall we consider it moved by Councillor Ravanas? A seconder? All those in favor? 3 in favor. Councillor Ramadas, Councillor Shoesmith, Councillor Audie Kelly. All those opposed? Myself, Councillor Hamilton, and Councillor Nixon. So for those at home, that's a tie and the motion is therefore defeated. But thank you for bringing it forward. These are not easy conversations. You want to comment? Yeah, please.
Just to be clear, Worship, I am not anti-fire hall. I want an operating fire hall, and I deeply appreciate the work that the fire services department puts in. I went with my colleagues there at the operations center. It is not pretty. I know that for a fact. The reason I'm put this motion is actually to help us win the referendum.
Yeah, I very much understand your intent and I appreciate your intent. I just think we need more information. Me personally, I need more information to advance it. And the one thing that sticks in my head is when we're at fire ops, we were putting the bunker gear on in a an repurposed ATCO trailer. And in a proper fire hall, that would not only have proper storage, it would be properly cleaned after every response so that our firemen and firewomen are not taking home carcinogens every day. Like there are things we need to do for them, to your point, and I'm not suggesting you're not supportive of firefighters in any way. At an absolutely basic level for the service they provide this community. And I want to make the best decision possible, not just for the firefighters, but for this community. So thank you for that. Councilor Oddie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. My big concern is, and I apologies to Councilor Nixon, I'm not trying to be negative. The feedback that I am getting, I want us to be sure that we can pass the referendum, because as Councilor Hamilton has rightly pointed out, like that failure will cost us more money as well. And we have to get our firefighters into something that works, because yes, they're safer as Chief points out, but it's not ideal.
Thank you. And as always, great discussion. Can we go home now? No, we can't. Item 14, correspondence, a request from support from Community Futures East Kootenay. And there is an optional resolution. Councillor Hamilton.
I was just going to move that we draft a letter of support. I think I jumped the gun.
Would you like to read the resolution, Ms. Daniel?
That council provide a letter of support for the Community Futures East Kootenay's grant application.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. All those in favor? Sorry, I didn't ask for discussion, but thank you. That's unanimous. Council reports. Well, first off, I am going to say, and I apologize because this, maybe we should go to the. Do that. Please. On behalf of Mayor and Council and all the staff at City of Fernie, I want to say thank you to Youth Councillor Annis for his participation in as a youth councillor. It's been exceptional tonight. Just another great example of highly articulate, always contributing when you can to council, and you've really distinguished yourself with your service as our youth councillors. So thank you very much, and best of luck. Okay? And you're off to
UFC.
UFC. There
Thank
you
you
are.
so much.
A little gift from us.
I'd like to thank the Academy. No, but truly, this has been an amazing experience for me. And the Youth Counselor program serves as not just an opportunity of getting involved with your community, but also as an amazing educational experience. I was having a conversation with one of my peers about where I was last year versus where I am now in terms of just where I'm going with my life. I think this opportunity has provided me with so many other opportunities to grow in the sense of this is how change happens. And that's why this program like inspired me, and that's why I wanted to do it, was how can I personally help to improve Fernie? And so honestly, I would like to commemorate everybody in this room for doing just that. It is amazing to be in this room with you, and it's truly inspiring. And I hope you know I look up to every single one of you guys. So thank you so much.
We look up to you too, youth counselor. You've been an inspiration.
With that, we'll move on to council reports. Start with Councillor Hamilton.
I don't think I have anything to report this week.
Okay. Councillor Shoesmith.
Yeah, I just would like to thank my fellow counselors for some really excellent debate today. That's kind of what I signed up for. And I'd like to just say I'm working down in the annex where we're doing our whole sidewalk thing. I got to say the contractors down there are quite easy for people to deal with, or at least they try to be so. They're quite nice to my clients. So
Thank you. Councillor Nixon.
Maybe Councillor Hamilton wants to go again.
We'll go
Does
back.
he want to
him.
redo?
We'll come back to him.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I attended the last week was quite a busy week. Attended the community center meeting with over 30 representatives from various groups, including SD5, soccer, volleyball, tech, CBT, pickleball, basketball, swimming, so many groups, right? I was pleased to see Rachel Romero from Fernie Secondary attend and make it clear that their enrollment has gone from 420 to 520, meaning that they can no longer support any additional community groups due to their own teams and activities. They might even have to cancel existing community groups this year, which is, I know that we talked about this and we were going to lean a little bit on FSS, and for her to come into this room and to tell everybody at that juncture that it's not a possibility was really important. I think one of the most promising ideas came from Ms. Sombrowski from the Fernie Academy, who proposed a solution that maintains parking behind the Academy while constructing a beautiful, larger facility in our downtown core, even bigger than the FSS gym. Although there is a covenant on part of that land, and I've heard several people say to me, it's never going to be removed. We need to move past this for the entire community's benefit. There was much discussion about forming a community working group, which I believe met this week, which is really important. On Thursday, I participated in the Chamber Golf fundraiser golf event, where I performed very poorly. Topping the ball was a skill that I had passed on to Councillor Shoesmith, but not to McIsaac. My other golf partner was Simon House. I got to ride around in a cart with him all day. So we did talked about lots of stuff. It was great. And it's funny, despite I have athletic background, I bike and I ski and I play hockey and all that kind of stuff. So you think that when you go there, you're going to be a good golfer. It doesn't work like that. Surprise, surprise. And I want to say, thanks to the Chamber for organizing it. And I was sad that I wasn't there for the dinner, but the rest was really good. And then the Community Energy Association was there, and there was a bunch of great sponsors. So it was great. Lastly, my wife and I attended the Border Walk in Roosevelt on Friday, June 21st, which was National Indigenous Peoples Day. It was a spectacular day. The Ktunaxa people, whose traditional territory spans parts of southeastern British Columbia and Canada, North Idaho, northwestern Montana, and the U.S., crossed the border on this day to celebrate their cultural heritage and maintain connections with their relatives and communities. It honors their history, traditions, and continued presence in their ancestral lands. So I want to say thank you to the Nisuka and Heidi Gravel for including us in this beautiful event. This was my 4th time going down there. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Eddie Kelly.
Well, Councillor Nixon's always a hard act to follow, but I volunteered at the night for NICU, and it was really, the weather was not kind, but the spirit was great and the entertainment was spectacular. So I was really honored to volunteer at that function. I wanted to talk a little bit about Council Cafe, and also to thank the citizens from 7th who were incredibly gracious in voicing their concerns. And I'm glad that we were able to work with them and meet with them as we subsequently did after Council Cafe. But at Council Cafe, so many things came up. The pool, soccer, the sidewalks in Ridgemont and 7th, the community center closing. So all of those things were lively discussions. And so thank you very much to people for coming out, and please continue to come out. I know a couple people spoke about community engagement to Let's Talk, and it is really important to every single person on this council. I believe I can say that. without offending anyone. We want to hear from you. So thank you, thank you, thank you to all those citizens that do come forward and speak up. I won't go on too much, but Councillor Nixon very nicely captured the meeting that we had with the community groups about this center. And it kind of gives you renewed faith because there are so many bright minds in that room that had some great ideas. And certainly the Fernie Academy proposal is extremely intriguing and actually has parking involved in it. Yep. So that was an excellent meeting that I was really happy to attend with Mayor Milligan and Councillor Nixon. And I did golf in the chamber, and Councillor Nixon thinks he golfed badly. Well, we won the golfing badly. My husband was like, took me out in the backyard and said, like, you have to try and at least hit a few balls. Like, you're going to embarrass yourself. It's going to be really bad. So when I texted him and said, guess what? On the first hole, my ball was the best ball twice. He was quite shocked. So thank you very much to Councillor Hamilton and Ramadas. And Mayor Milligan had, unfortunately, to go to something else, but he came and joined us later. So we did take his shot a few times.
Thank you.
So thanks very much.
Youth Councillor, do you have anything to add?
I don't have anything to add. Other than I missed this out when I was up there. Attending BCYP was another amazing aspect of the program, and I'm hoping that can continue on for future youth counselors. And it's something I plan to continue working with within the next 5 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ramadas.
Nothing major, Your Worship. Again, I think my colleagues have covered everything pretty well. Yeah, we missed you at the golf, but you know, we've got a good picture of you on the Mulligan card there. Yeah, just I've gotten a lot of inputs from many citizens about the success of the town hall. Sorry, the Tuesday Council Cafe. And I apologize, I haven't been able to make it because of my work commitment, but the next opportunity, I look forward to attending that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Hamilton, did something actually occur to you?
Well, it's there. I have done a lot, but it's already all been articulated by other councillors, so okay. I won't add.
Thank you. Yeah, not to put too many coats of paint on it, but I also wanted to thank everybody who comes out and continues to come out to our council cafe. It's an excellent venue, and it's for those who are maybe thinking about it and haven't come out. It's very casual. It's an open invitation. We tend to split up between two tables so we don't have quorum in the room. But yeah, if you want to have something you want to talk to council about, please come out. And the next one, actually, this coming week, we're going to bump it to July 2nd. And Ms. Daniel and I were having a conversation about timing. And through the summer, we may rearrange it a bit, Councillor Ramadas, so that perhaps you can attend. But when we kind of get to that, we'll let you know.
Thanks, Your Worship.
Not at all. Again, yeah, I appreciate the support of Councillor Nixon and Councillor Audie Kelly at the Community Center Users Group meeting on the 19th. And I do want to reiterate and commiserate that I understand what a loss this is for our community. But so grateful for all those people who attended and their solution-oriented mindset. Like it was a very valuable meeting and set us on a path. We have a working group. We met for the first time yesterday. I will share the notes from that because it fell to me to take the notes of this one. I'll share the notes with council so they can see how the conversation is advancing. And I wasn't able to attend the golf tournament because Manager Similini and I met with RDK staff, the area director of Mayors of Sparwood and Elkford, to discuss the integration of the 3 Elk Valley OCPs. So the OCP for Fernie Alpine Resort, the OCP for Island Lake, and the Elk Valley OCP. Those will all be integrated into one OCP. And as we are currently developing our own official community plan, looking for opportunities to integrate our efforts and make sure that we understand what those parties are all doing, and how we can work together. Again, the Border Walk, a very, very powerful event. Really recommend folks attend that. It is an open invitation. If you RSVP with the nation, and yeah, really quite powerful. And lastly, I just wanted to congratulate the Elk Valley Suicide Task Force. They held their Solstice Ride for Mental Health this weekend. Very important conversation in the community, and it was a great focus for the day, and I was very pleased to participate, and I would encourage others to do so in the future. With that, I will look to council and say thank you, echoing Councillor Shoesmith's comments earlier. Lots of great debate this evening, and very valuable conversations, and so I very much appreciate each and every one of you and your participation, and once again wish Youth Councillor Annis the best of luck, and thank everybody for joining us this evening. And with that, we'll call the meeting adjourned at 8:31. Thank you, Ms. Rose.